Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, A Perfect Illusion. Dominic Cole turned the key in the lock of his front door, exhaustion etched across his features. At 42, he had built himself up from nothing. A software architect whose security systems protected some of the most valuable data in the country. The colonial-style house in Oakwood Heights was the manifestation of 15 years of relentless work. "I'm home," he called out, his voice echoing through the expansive foyer. Melissa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Their 10-year marriage had been the anchor in Dominic's otherwise chaotic life. Or so he believed. "You're late," she said, kissing his cheek perfunctorily. "Mom's staying with us for a few weeks. She's upstairs settling in." Dominic suppressed a groan. Vivian Trask had never approved of him. The sentiment was mutual, but he maintained civility for Melissa's sake. "Great," he muttered. "I've got to finish the Larson proposal tonight. It could double our company's value if we land it." "Always working," Melissa sighed, turning back toward the kitchen. "Dinner's in the microwave." Dominic watched her walk away, noticing how she checked her phone immediately, a slight smile playing on her lips as she read something on the screen. Later that night, as Dominic worked in his home office, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his business partner, Russell Donahue. "Dom, someone's been accessing our prototype files remotely. Security flag just tripped. You know anything about this?" Dominic frowned. The security system he'd designed had multiple redundancies, and unauthorized access should be impossible. "Nothing on my end. Lock it down. I'll check the logs in the morning." What Dominic didn't know was that the access attempt was just the beginning, the first thread in a tapestry of betrayal woven long before he even suspected something was wrong. In the guest bedroom, Vivian Trask sat at the edge of the bed, speaking softly into her phone. "He's home now. Are we still proceeding as planned?" The voice on the other end belonged to Preston Warner, a corporate lawyer who had been Melissa's confidant for years, and recently, much more. "Stay the course, Vivian. 3 more weeks, and everything changes." Chapter 2, The Digital Erasure. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came 5 days after Vivian's arrival. Dominic returned from a morning run to find his mother-in-law seated at his desk in the home office, his computer screen flashing error messages. "What are you doing in here?" Dominic asked, alarm rising in his chest. Vivian jumped, turning with wide eyes. "Oh, Dominic. I was just cleaning up a bit. This room was so dusty, and I noticed your computer had all these little notification things saying it needed cleaning up. I ran something called disk cleanup, but then all these messages started appearing." Dominic pushed past her, horror washing over him as he assessed the damage. His entire project directory, containing months of proprietary code for the Larson proposal, was gone. The trash had been emptied. The backup drive that should have been connected was missing from its dock. "What have you done?" he whispered, fingers flying over the keyboard as he tried to salvage what he could. "I was trying to help," Vivian protested, backing toward the door. "Computers always work better when they're tidied up." Melissa appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension. "What's going on?" "Your mother deleted all my work files," Dominic said through clenched teeth. "Months of work. The Larson proposal. Everything." Melissa's face flushed with anger, but not at her mother. She was trying to help. "God, Dom, you always overreact. It's not like you don't have backups." "The backup drive is missing," he said, pointing to the empty dock. A flicker of something, was it knowledge, crossed Melissa's face before she composed herself. "You probably took it to the office and forgot. Mom was just trying to be helpful." "Helpful?" Dominic laughed bitterly. "This could cost us the biggest contract of my career." "Don't be so dramatic," Melissa snapped, putting an arm around her mother. "Come on, Mom. Let's let him cool off." That night, feigning sleep, Dominic lay still as Melissa slipped out of bed around midnight. He waited a few minutes before following silently. Voices drifted from the kitchen, Melissa and Vivian, speaking in hushed tones. "This is moving too slowly," Melissa whispered. "Preston says we need to accelerate the timeline." "We're doing the best we can," Vivian replied. The deleted files were a good start. His company will struggle without that proposal. "How long until we get his name off the house?" Melissa asked, her voice cold and calculating. "Preston says once the business starts failing, We can push for the divorce when he's at his weakest. Dominic froze in the hallway, his world imploding around him. The woman he had trusted completely was plotting his professional and personal destruction with her mother and someone named Preston. He retreated silently to their bedroom, mind racing. Instead of confronting them, instinct told him to wait and gather information. Dominic Cole had not built a security empire by being impulsive. No, he would approach this betrayal like any security breach, identify the vulnerabilities, gather intelligence, and then strike with overwhelming force. Chapter 3. The Counter-Surveillance. Dominic went to work the next morning without saying a word about what he'd overheard. On the surface, he played the part of a man distressed about losing important files, making frantic calls to tech support and cloud services about recovery options. In reality, he was setting his counteroffensive in motion. His first call was to Russell. "I need a favor, no questions asked." "You know I've got your back," Russell replied without hesitation. Their friendship predated the business. They'd roomed together in college where Russell had witnessed Dominic's rise from scholarship student to technological prodigy. "I need surveillance equipment. The best you can get, nothing traceable." There was a pause on the line. "Dom, what's going on?" "Melissa's planning something with her mother and someone named Preston. They deleted my files deliberately." Russell swore under his breath. "The backup? Missing. I think they took it." "Jesus, what are you thinking?" Dominic's voice hardened. "I'm thinking it's time to play their game better than they do." Within hours, Dominic had converted a storage room at his office into a command center. Micro cameras and audio devices were prepped for installation throughout his home. A background search on Preston associated with Melissa was already running. As he worked, his phone began buzzing incessantly, message after message from Melissa. By the end of the day, he had received 47 increasingly desperate texts and calls. "Dom, where are you? Mom feels terrible about yesterday. Please call me back. Are you staying at the office tonight? Dom, I'm worried about you. The bank called about unusual activity on our account. Did you withdraw $10,000 in cash? Dom, please answer your phone." The final message caught his attention. He had made no such withdrawal. They were already moving against his finances. That evening, while Melissa and Vivian attended a charity fundraiser that Melissa had suddenly insisted they couldn't miss, Dominic returned home. Within 2 hours, he had installed surveillance throughout the house, cameras in air vents, microphones under furniture, and a specialized device that would clone any phone that connected to their home Wi-Fi. The search on Preston had yielded results. Preston Warner, a corporate attorney specializing in divorces and business dissolutions. His firm was located just 3 blocks from Melissa's yoga studio, the one she attended 4 times a week, although her sessions supposedly lasted only 1 hour, while she was always gone for 3. As Dominic finished his installations, he accessed Melissa's laptop. Her password, their anniversary date, was pathetically easy to crack. What he found confirmed his suspicions. Emails between Melissa and Preston dating back 18 months, evolving from professional consultations about theoretical divorce scenarios to explicit romantic exchanges. Most damning was a document titled Exit Strategy, detailing a plan to systematically destroy Dominic's business, drain their joint assets, and manufacture evidence of professional negligence that would give Melissa leverage in divorce proceedings. Dominic's phone buzzed again with Melissa's 48th message of the day. "Coming home soon. Mom made your favorite apple pie as an apology. I love you." Dominic felt a cold clarity wash over him. The last 10 years had been a lie, and the woman he'd built his life around was orchestrating his destruction. But they had made a critical error. They had targeted a man whose entire career was built on identifying threats and neutralizing them before they could do damage. He typed a reply, the first acknowledgement of her messages all day. "On my way. Looking forward to pie." As he drove home, Dominic made a vow. By the time this was over, Melissa, Vivian, and Preston would understand what it truly meant to lose everything. Chapter 4. The Infiltration. For the next 3 weeks, Dominic played the role of an oblivious husband perfectly. On the surface, he appeared to be struggling with the loss of his work, growing increasingly desperate as the Larson deadline approached. He accepted Vivian's insincere apologies and Melissa's performative support, all while monitoring their every move through his surveillance network. What he discovered was more elaborate than he'd initially feared. Preston Warner wasn't just Melissa's lover. He was a calculated predator who specialized in helping wealthy spouses extract maximum assets in divorces. His unofficial client list included 3 former clients of Dominic's security firm, all of whom had experienced mysterious data breaches before their marriages imploded. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a practice scheme. Through careful observation, Dominic also learned that his mother-in-law Vivian had a history of financial troubles. She had twice remortgaged her home to cover gambling debts, and now faced foreclosure. Her motivation was clear. If Melissa took Dominic for everything, Vivian would be saved from financial ruin. On a Tuesday afternoon, while supposedly at work, Dominic tracked Melissa's phone to the Westbrook Hotel. The surveillance app he'd installed on her cloned phone allowed him to activate her microphone remotely. "We've got a problem." Preston's voice came through clearly. "He's been too calm about the files. I expected him to self-destruct, start drinking again, something we could use." Dominic's jaw tightened. He had struggled with alcohol in his 20s after his parents' death, but had been sober for 15 years. Melissa had only known him as a sober man, yet here she was, hoping for a relapse she could weaponize. "He's always been controlled," Melissa replied. "That's what makes him so frustrating. Everything calculated, everything planned. No spontaneity, no passion. Well, we need to accelerate. The property transfer documents are ready. Once you get him to sign the refinancing papers for the house, thinking it's for his business loan, we'll have legal access to drain the equity." "And the business?" Melissa asked. "I've been speaking with Russell." Dominic felt a cold shock run through him. "He's reluctant, but I reminded him about that incident in Phoenix. He doesn't want that becoming public knowledge. If Dominic's business partner turns against him, testifying to negligence, the company's value will plummet before the divorce filing." Russell, his oldest friend, was being blackmailed into betrayal. Dominic had heard enough. He switched off the audio and sat back, reassessing the battlefield. The enemy forces were larger than anticipated, but every piece of intelligence was a weapon in his arsenal. That evening, Dominic called Russell. "We need to meet." "Not at the office." 3 hours later, they sat in a 24-hour diner 40 miles outside the city. "They got to you," Dominic said without preamble. Russell's face crumpled. "Dom, I'm sorry. Warner approached me last week. He knows about Phoenix." The Phoenix incident had been a near-catastrophic security error during the early days of their company, one that Russell had technically been responsible for, but Dominic had covered for him, absorbing the professional blow to protect his friend. "What exactly does he want you to do?" "Testify that you've been negligent, that you've been making critical errors. They want me to leak client information showing patterns of security failures." Russell looked miserable. "I haven't agreed to anything yet, but they're threatening to expose Phoenix, which would end my career." Dominic nodded slowly. "I need you to agree to everything they ask." Russell blinked in confusion. "What? Agree to help them? But everything goes through me first. We're going to feed them exactly what I want them to have." For the first time in weeks, Dominic smiled, a cold, dangerous expression that made Russell shift uncomfortably. "You're planning something." "Yes," Dominic said simply. "And when it's done, they'll wish they'd never heard my name." Chapter 5, The False Trail. Dominic knew that to defeat his enemies, he needed to appear vulnerable while secretly strengthening his position. He began laying a false trail, evidence of a man spiraling out of control. He started coming home late, clothes smelling faintly of alcohol that he'd splashed on his collar but never actually consumed. He left browser histories showing searches for depression symptoms and divorce lawyers. He made secret phone calls that were meant to be overheard, discussing financial difficulties and possible bankruptcy. All the while, his surveillance captured Melissa and Vivian's triumphant reactions. They believed their plan was working perfectly. "It's happening even faster than we expected," Vivian gloated one evening when they thought Dominic was out. "Preston says with the way he's unraveling, we can file within a month and take everything." Melissa laughed, a sound that once brought Dominic joy but now felt like acid in his ears. "The idiot still thinks I love him. Yesterday he actually tried to kiss me, and I had to pretend I had a headache." Behind the scenes, Dominic was methodically securing his assets. He quietly established new shell companies under layers of legal protection. He transferred funds to untraceable accounts. He documented every conversation, every plan, every betrayal. Most importantly, He began reconstructing the Larson proposal from fragments stored on encrypted cloud servers that only he could access. The real twist came when Preston Warner arrived for dinner one evening. Introduced as an old friend from college, whom Melissa had allegedly reconnected with recently. Dominic pretended not to notice the meaningful glances between them or the way Preston's hand lingered on Melissa's lower back when Dominic was supposedly not looking. Preston's a lawyer, Melissa explained over dinner. Corporate law, mostly. How interesting, Dominic replied, playing the part of an oblivious husband. Any cases I might have heard about? Preston smiled smugly. I prefer to keep my client list confidential, but I specialize in helping people protect what's rightfully theirs. A noble pursuit, Dominic raised his glass in a mock toast. To protecting what's rightfully ours. Later that week, Dominic's surveillance captured a critical conversation in Melissa's car. He actually likes you, Melissa told Preston, laughing. This is perfect. He trusted me to handle the household finances for years. With his signature on those refinancing documents, we'll have access to the home equity line of credit. That's $400,000 we can siphon off before he even realizes. And you've got the papers ready? Preston asked. In my desk drawer. He'll sign them tomorrow. I'll tell him it's for the business loan he's been stressing about. Dominic now had the final piece of his immediate counter-strategy. That night, while Melissa slept, he replaced the refinancing documents in her desk with his own modified versions. Papers that appeared identical but contained microscopically altered legal language. When signed, they would actually transfer Preston's assets into a trust controlled by Dominic, not the other way around. The next morning, Melissa approached him with coffee and sympathy. Honey, I know you've been worried about the business loan. I had the papers drawn up like you asked. We just need your signature, and the refinancing will be complete. Dominic signed with a flourish, his expression revealing nothing. Thanks for handling this. I don't know what I'd do without you. Melissa smiled, kissing his cheek. That's what wives are for. As she walked away, Dominic allowed himself a small, grim smile. Phase 1 of his counterattack was complete. Chapter 6, The Unexpected Ally. Dominic's careful planning hit an unexpected complication when Melissa's younger sister, Natalie, arrived unannounced. Unlike her sister and mother, Natalie had always been straightforward and honest, sometimes painfully so. She had never pretended to approve of Melissa's materialistic lifestyle, which had created tension between the sisters for years. Surprise! Natalie called out, wheeling her suitcase through the front door on a Friday afternoon. I finally finished my fellowship in Costa Rica. Thought I'd crash here for a few days before heading to my new job in Seattle. Dominic watched with interest as both Melissa and Vivian's faces fell. Natalie, Melissa managed, giving her sister a stiff hug. We weren't expecting you. That's kind of the point of a surprise, Natalie laughed, turning to embrace Dominic warmly. How's my favorite brother-in-law? Been better, he admitted, seeing an opportunity. Work challenges. Natalie's presence created an immediate disruption to Melissa and Vivian's scheming. They couldn't speak freely with her in the house, and Preston had to temporarily keep his distance to maintain the charade of being just an old friend. That evening, while Melissa and Vivian made a grocery run, Natalie cornered Dominic in the kitchen. Okay, what's really going on here? The tension in this house is thick enough to cut with a knife, and my sister looks at you like you're a problem to be solved, not a husband to be loved. Something about Natalie's directness made Dominic decide to take a calculated risk. He led her to the back patio where they couldn't be overheard. What I'm about to tell you stays between us, he began, then laid out the entire situation. The deleted files, the overheard conversation, the surveillance, and the plot he had uncovered. Natalie listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I wish I could say I'm surprised, she finally said. But Melissa's always been our mother's daughter. Everything's a transaction to them. She looked up at Dominic. What are you planning to do? I'm going to make sure they understand the consequences of their actions, Dominic replied evenly. Permanently. Natalie studied his face. They're still my family, despite everything. I'm not going to physically harm them, if that's what you're asking. But when I'm done, they will have nothing, no money, no reputation, no future. And Preston, Dominic's expression hardened. He's done this before. He deserves everything coming to him. Natalie considered this, then nodded slowly. I want in. What? I want to help you. Her eyes flashed with determination. Not because I want to see my sister destroyed, but because she needs to face consequences for once in her life. Melissa has spent years using people and walking away unscathed. It's time that changed. Dominic hadn't expected an ally, especially not from Melissa's family. But Natalie's psychology background and intimate knowledge of both Melissa and Vivian's past behaviors could prove invaluable. There's something else you should know, Natalie said quietly. This isn't the first time Melissa has done this. There was a man before you, Walter Bennington. They weren't married, but they were engaged. He had a promising political career ahead of him. When she was done with him, he had nothing. Not his reputation, not his career prospects, not even his self-respect. He moved abroad and changed his name. The revelation landed like a blow. Dominic had known Melissa was calculating, but learning this was part of a pattern shifted something fundamental in his understanding of the situation. I'll need access to their old correspondences, he said. Anything that shows a pattern. Natalie nodded. Mom keeps everything. She has boxes of letters and printed emails in her attic. Documentation of every scheme she's ever been involved in. She thinks it's protection, but it's actually a ticking time bomb. I know where she keeps the key. They spent the rest of the evening outlining a modified plan, one that would use Natalie's inside knowledge to devastating effect. With her help, Dominic would not only protect himself, but expose a lifetime of manipulations by both Melissa and Vivian. As they finished talking, Dominic's phone buzzed with a text from Russell. Warner just approached me again. Says they're accelerating the timeline. They're planning to move against you next week. Dominic showed the message to Natalie. We need to move faster than I thought. Then we start tonight, she replied, her determination matching his own. Once Melissa and Mom are asleep, we'll make our first move. The game was changing. Dominic had prepared for a chess match, but with Natalie's help, he could now orchestrate a complete annihilation of his opponent's position. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, he felt a flicker of something like satisfaction. Melissa, Vivian, and Preston had chosen the wrong man to destroy. Chapter 7. The Counter-Strike. The plan accelerated that very night. While Melissa and Vivian slept, Dominic and Natalie drove to Vivian's house 3 hours away. Using the hidden key that Natalie knew about, they retrieved the boxes of documentation from the attic. Decades of manipulations carefully preserved by Vivian as insurance against her co-conspirators. She never throws away leverage, Natalie explained as they loaded the boxes into Dominic's car. Mom thinks these make her powerful, but she doesn't realize they're evidence of her own crimes. Back at Dominic's command center, they began sorting through the material. What they found exceeded Dominic's expectations. Evidence linking Vivian and Melissa to 3 other cases similar to his own. Wealthy men systematically stripped of their assets and reputations. Preston Warner appeared in documentation dating back 7 years, indicating a long-running partnership. Most disturbingly, they found a journal detailing how Melissa had deliberately targeted Dominic from the beginning, approaching him at a cybersecurity conference where she had researched his background, financial prospects, and psychological vulnerabilities beforehand. She called you the project, Natalie said quietly, reading from a journal entry. She knew about your parents' death, your history with alcohol, your drive to succeed. She used all of it to position herself as your perfect partner. Dominic absorbed this with cold detachment. The hurt had solidified into resolve weeks ago. Now, he was simply gathering ammunition. By morning, they had organized the evidence into 3 categories: legally damning, professionally destructive, and personally devastating. With this arsenal, Dominic was ready to launch his counteroffensive. Phase 1 began with Russell playing his part perfectly. He met with Preston, appearing to cooperate fully with their scheme against Dominic. He handed over doctored company documents that appeared to show serious security breaches, documents that, when scrutinized by actual experts, would prove to be obvious forgeries created by Preston and Melissa. Meanwhile, Dominic made his first direct move. He contacted Walter Bennington, Melissa's former fiancé, now living under a different name in Portugal. I don't know who you are, the man said cautiously when Dominic reached him by phone. But I left that life behind years ago. I'm Melissa's husband, Dominic replied simply. There was a long silence on the line. Then you have my condolences. I need your testimony. She's doing to me what she did to you. Another pause. Even if I wanted to help you, which I'm not saying I do, I signed non-disclosure agreements as part of our settlement. Those agreements were with Melissa Palmer, not Melissa Cole. Legally, they're unenforceable now. This wasn't strictly true, but Dominic was counting on Warner having cut corners in the documentation. Besides, I'm not asking you to volunteer. I'm sending you a formal subpoena. By the next day, Dominic had filed legal actions against Preston Warner for attempted fraud, conspiracy, and legal malpractice, using the documentation from Vivian's attic as supporting evidence. The complaints were sealed by the court, meaning Preston would be served without any warning, and Melissa and Vivian would remain temporarily unaware. On the home front, Dominic continued his act of a man unraveling, while Natalie played her own role masterfully. She, accidentally, let slip to Melissa that Dominic had mentioned meeting with divorce attorneys, accelerating their timeline exactly as he wanted. Their reaction was swift. That evening, Melissa approached Dominic with forced casualness. "Honey, I was thinking we should update our wills and financial directives. Preston offered to help us as a favor. He does estate planning too." "That's thoughtful of him," Dominic replied, feigning distraction. "When he can come by tomorrow with the paperwork. Just simple updates, nothing major." Dominic nodded, appearing too depressed to question anything. "Whatever you think is best." That night, while Melissa slept, Dominic and Natalie executed the next phase of their plan. They planted evidence from Vivian's archives in strategic locations throughout the house, hidden just well enough that a deliberate search would find them, but not so obvious as to arouse suspicion. The stage was set for Preston's arrival the next day. When the lawyer arrived, briefcase in hand and smug confidence in his bearing, Dominic greeted him with the demeanor of a defeated man. They sat in the living room, Preston explaining the routine financial documents that were, in fact, designed to give Melissa control over all of Dominic's assets. As Preston laid out the papers, Dominic's phone rang. He excused himself to answer it in the kitchen, leaving his signature pen on the table, a clear invitation to proceed. The moment Dominic left the room, Preston pulled out his own pen, quickly adding additional clauses to several documents, a move captured perfectly by the hidden cameras Dominic had installed. When Dominic returned, he signed without reading, playing the part of a distracted, trusting husband. Preston barely contained his triumphant smile. "I'll file these right away," he said, gathering the papers. "For your protection, of course." "Of course," Dominic echoed, walking him to the door. "Thank you for your help, Preston." As the lawyer drove away, Natalie emerged from the guest room where she'd been monitoring the surveillance feed. "He took the bait," she confirmed. "Added illegal clauses to at least 3 documents after you left the room." Dominic nodded. "And now we have video evidence of attorney fraud." What Preston didn't know was that the documents he so eagerly took were not the originals, but fakes, papers that, when filed, would trigger automatic fraud alerts with the State Bar Association. More importantly, Preston had just implicated himself in a conspiracy that Dominic had meticulously documented from start to finish. The trap had been sprung. Now, it was just a matter of watching it close. Chapter 8. The Collapse. The next morning, Preston Warner was served with court papers as he entered his office building. By noon, he had been contacted by the State Bar Association regarding serious allegations of professional misconduct. By 3 o'clock, agents from the Financial Crimes Division had arrived at his office with a warrant based on evidence anonymously provided by Dominic. Melissa was shopping when Dominic sent her a simple text, "Come home now. Emergency." She arrived to find Dominic sitting calmly at the kitchen table, a stack of folders in front of him. "What's going on?" she asked, setting down her shopping bags. "Are you okay?" "Sit down, Melissa," he said quietly. Something in his tone made her comply immediately. Vivian entered from the living room, looking concerned. Natalie stood silently in the corner, arms crossed. "Preston Warner was arrested 2 hours ago," Dominic began conversationally. "Fraud, conspiracy, multiple counts of legal malpractice. They're also investigating a pattern of organized criminal activity targeting high-net-worth individuals." The color drained from Melissa's face. "I don't understand what that has to do with us." Dominic smiled thinly. "Don't you?" He opened the first folder and turned it toward her. Inside were printouts of her emails with Preston, dating back 18 months. "Or maybe these will help clarify." Vivian stepped forward. "Now listen here." "No, you listen," Dominic cut her off, his voice hardening. "I know everything. The deleted files, the missing backup, the plan to steal my business, the house, everything. I've known for weeks. He opened another folder containing transcripts of their conversations captured by his surveillance system. This is illegal, Melissa sputtered. You can't record people without. In our state, I can record conversations in my own home without consent, Dominic corrected her. Especially when there's evidence of a criminal conspiracy. Vivian attempted a different approach. Dominic, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Save it, Natalie interrupted. I helped him find your boxes, Mom. All of them. The mention of the boxes caused Vivian to collapse into a chair, her face ashen. I've already submitted everything to the authorities, Dominic continued calmly. The pattern of behavior, the previous victims, the documentation you so helpfully preserved, Vivian. Right now, Preston is being offered a deal. Testify against you both or face the maximum penalties alone. You're bluffing, Melissa said weakly. In response, Dominic played an audio recording. Preston's voice, panicked, leaving a voicemail for Melissa just 20 minutes earlier. They have everything. The Cole job, the Bennington case, everything. Don't contact me again. My lawyer says I need to cooperate fully. Melissa lunged for her phone, but Dominic was faster, holding up a hand to stop her. Your accounts have been frozen, he informed her. And before you think about the money you siphoned into your secret account, it's already gone. Transferred back, with a clear paper trail showing your theft. You can't do this, Melissa whispered, shock giving way to fury. I'll tell everyone you abused me, that you're unstable. No one will believe you, Dominic replied. Not with the evidence I have. Not with your history. Walter Bennington is flying in tomorrow to give a sworn statement about what you did to him. And he's not the only one. The systematic dismantling of their scheme had happened so quickly that neither Melissa nor Vivian had formulated a coherent response. They had expected to be the predators, not the prey. You have 30 minutes to pack essential items, Dominic continued, checking his watch. After that, this property will be secured and you will not be permitted to return. This is my house too, Melissa shouted, desperation edging into her voice. Actually, it isn't. Dominic slid another document across the table. Remember the refinancing papers you had me sign? The ones you switched? I switched them back, with improvements. You signed all your interest in this property over to a trust. You own nothing, Melissa. Not anymore. As the reality of their situation sank in, Vivian began to sob quietly. Melissa's face contorted with rage. You think this is over? She hissed. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I know exactly what you're capable of, Dominic corrected her. That's why I've been 3 steps ahead of you from the moment your mother accidentally deleted my files. He glanced at his watch again. 27 minutes remaining. When neither woman moved, Natalie stepped forward. I'll help you pack, Mom, she said quietly. It's over. As Natalie led a shell-shocked Vivian upstairs, Melissa remained seated, staring at Dominic with pure hatred. I never loved you, she said finally, trying to wound him one last time. Not for a single day. Dominic met her gaze steadily. I know. That's why I won't feel a thing when they take you away in handcuffs tomorrow. He stood up, gathering the folders. Your time is running out, Melissa. I suggest you use it wisely. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 6 months later, Dominic stood on the balcony of his penthouse office, overlooking the city. The Larson contract had been secured, doubling the company's value overnight. The legal proceedings against Melissa, Vivian, and Preston were progressing exactly as he had orchestrated. Preston Warner had taken the plea deal, turning state's evidence against both women. His license to practice law had been revoked, and he faced 5 years in prison even with the reduced charges. His reputation was destroyed, his assets seized to repay previous victims. Vivian had suffered a mild stroke during her arraignment, earning her some sympathy from the court. She would likely receive a suspended sentence, but the financial penalties had already reduced her to bankruptcy. The gambling debts she had hidden for years were now public record, along with her history of manipulating wealthy men through her daughter. Melissa had proven more resilient, refusing to plead guilty despite the overwhelming evidence. Her trial was scheduled for the following month, with multiple former victims prepared to testify against her. She had attempted to contact Dominic repeatedly, alternating between threats and desperate pleas for reconciliation, all documented and added to the prosecution's file. Russell knocked on the open door, interrupting Dominic's thoughts. The board meeting is about to start. They're excited about the expansion proposals. Dominic nodded, turning from the view. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. After what you did for me with the Phoenix situation, I owed you my career twice over. Russell hesitated. Have you heard from Natalie recently? She calls every week from Seattle. Her research position is going well. Dominic smiled slightly. She's the only good thing to come out of that family. As they walked toward the boardroom, Russell cleared his throat awkwardly. You know, there's been talk. People wondering if you went too far. Not professionally, but personally. Taking everything from them. Dominic stopped, turning to his friend. They planned to destroy me completely, professionally, financially, personally. They'd done it before to others. If I had shown any mercy, they would have found a way to use it against me eventually. I know, but there's no room for half measures with people like that, Dominic continued, his voice hardening. They understand only one language, absolute consequence. Anything less would have been perceived as weakness. Russell nodded slowly. Fair enough. Inside the boardroom, executives and investors waited expectantly. Dominic had become something of a legend in business circles. The security expert who had not only prevented a sophisticated attack on his company, but had turned it into an opportunity for unprecedented growth. What none of them knew, what only Russell partially understood, was the cold calculation behind Dominic's response to betrayal. He had not acted from emotion or vengeance. He had simply identified a threat and neutralized it with clinical precision. Later that evening, alone in his house, the house Melissa had coveted enough to destroy their marriage over, Dominic reviewed a final report from his private investigator. Melissa had been reaching out to former associates, attempting to rally support for her defense. She had found none. Every door was closed to her, every former ally warned away by the evidence Dominic had strategically released. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've taken everything from me. I hope you're satisfied. Dominic blocked the number without responding. Melissa still didn't understand. This had never been about satisfaction or revenge. It was simply the logical conclusion to the scenario she herself had initiated. Every betrayal carried consequences. Dominic had merely ensured that hers were proportional to her intentions. As he closed the file on that chapter of his life, Dominic reflected that there was a certain justice to the outcome. Melissa and her co-conspirators had attempted to use his trust against him, to exploit the vulnerabilities inherent in human connection. What they hadn't counted on was his capacity to sever that connection entirely, to view their betrayal not as an emotional wound, but as a security breach that required containment. In the end, they had failed not because their plan was flawed, but because they had chosen the wrong target. They had assumed that Dominic's technical brilliance made him an ideal mark, wealthy but naive in matters of human deception. What they hadn't understood was that the same analytical mind that had built impenetrable security systems could also dismantle their scheme with ruthless efficiency. Dominic poured himself a glass of water, never alcohol, despite the act he had put on for their benefit, and raised it in a silent toast to the empty room. To consequences. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.